Epic Radio, where we give you a verbal image of life, and we are everyday people. Like to welcome you all to the show. As you always hear me state that this show is like none other. You're not going to find this anywhere else, right? But look, we want to get into the topic of the militia and race to show you all how race and the militia plays a part in this thing called America. Now, at the time of the Revolutionary War, they used militia, or AKA Minutemen, to help fight against the British, right? But at that very same time, black people were in bondage. And when I say black, I mean the Native Americans, blacks that were already here, and the ones that came here from Africa. And also the Moors, right? That's why the Moors had to sign that 1790 Sundry Act, which is Sundry Act of 1790. They had to sign that because the colonizers couldn't tell the difference between the Moors, the freemen, or the slaves. Right, they were getting treated the same way. They had the right to Morocco and was like, hey man, they treating us like slaves and, kidnapping us and, putting us on plantations. So Morocco had to send back and say, hey, you can't treat them. You have to treat them as free individuals, right? Okay, that plays a part into the whole thing as well, right? If understood, but we'll get into that topic at a later date. But first, we want to get into the militia. But before we get into militia, I just want to say this, right? They had a special report on how Asians in America are being discriminated against by the words of Donald Trump. But then black people are saying, hey, we saw the commercial where the dude was black and you threw him in the wash and he comes out white, and all of the racism that was spewed at the Africans by the Chinese. So black people in America was like, well, if you're going to treat black people like that, we're not going to support your businesses. Now, black people, one thing you have to understand is you are in the global game, whether you know it or not. That's why when you hear me say, look, black people, you have to listen to Minister Farrakhan. The reason I say that is because Minister Farrakhan will put you up on the international global game. He'll lace you with the knowledge on what's going to give you world knowledge. Because black people in America, you are world players, whether you know it or not. Let me explain what I mean by you are a world player, right? Now, nobody buys more hair than black women. Nobody supports these nail shops more than black women. Nobody patronizes, whether it's the Korean store or the Chinese stores in the black areas, than black people. And they gather all that profit from selling loose cigarettes or selling products, and then they send their children to college, and also they send money back home to support these different governments, right? From the back of black people. Why? Because black people spend $1.3 trillion a year. But whenever racism shows its head and black folks unite, and then they say, we're not spending money in these stores, then that's not only affect the store, that affects the money that's going into these other governments or these other countries, right? So you are a global player. Now, some will say, well, damn, we can't mess over Africa like we want to, because then the blacks in America stand up and they'll stop supporting us. We'll lose money. We got to find a way to deal with them over in the Americas, right? And then, but you hear your president calling it the Kung flu, the Chinese virus. And some people saying, oh man, you wrong for that. But the flip side is black people are telling China, hey, you wrong for kicking Africans out on the street, blaming them for corona, or going into Africa and not respecting the people who were the originators who's been on that land, and then you come over there and treat them like they less than nothing. That's not gonna work. It's not gonna work. That it'll always be a problem. Because why? You hear Kamala Harris, she say, well, the first black female. They said, well, I thought she's from India. Melanin means black. More means black. If she has that melanin, that comes from that triple darkness from God himself. So she has the right to say, I'm a black female. Them dark-skinned Indians with that melanin in them, those are black Indians in India or Punjab or whatever you call it. They know it. Just like the blacks in Brazil, just like the blacks in the Dominican who try to say, I'm not black. You got melanin in your body. That relates to black because that's the substance that the God used when he clothed himself in flesh. That was the only substance around, was that black melanin. So, think about what you're saying, right? But back to the militia, right? AKA Minutemen. Let me explain that to you all because you're going to see this and you have to know what it's about because you're going to start hearing more of the terms of Civil War and militia and Second Amendment and Constitution. So we got to put you up on game of what's really going on, right? The Minutemen were civilian colonists who independently organized to form militia companies, self-trained in weaponry, tactics, and military strategies from the American colonial partisan militia during the American Revolutionary War. But I just wanted to pause to get back as what you read in the news when they was plotting on blowing up bridges. They were doing surveillance on the Governor Whitmer vacation home and such because since the Revolutionary War, you had militias, and that's what they do. They are self-trained in weaponry, tactics, and military strategies from the American colonial partisan militia during the American Revolutionary War. They were known for being ready at a minute's notice, hence the name Minutemen, provided a highly mobile, rapidly deployed force that enabled the colonies to respond immediately to war threats, right? So if Trump say, well, look, the code words, when he said, okay, this COVID-19, this is a war stage, right? When he makes that statement, then that's code. Those who in the militia stand up and they say, well, wait a minute. Okay, we prepare because they train for this. You be saying, well, send these people in these military gear and they have these weapons and they shooting and they training and gas masks and whole nine. Those are Minutemen and militias ready to move at a minute's notice when they feel like the country or the Constitution is being threatened. So whenever a president is in office, he can say, we're in a war theater. When this is wartime, and they automatically are activated, right? Now, we as minorities, black and brown, don't know too much about this. You know what I mean? But yet, that's why you've seen the NFAC form their black militia, right? And they got to be ready at a moment's notice. Because you got to remember at the time, the Revolutionary War, even though the first person who was shot was a black man in that Revolutionary War, but at the same time, a lot of blacks at the time were in slavery, and some considered 3/5 of a human, which we'll get into what my take on 3/5 of a human being was. Let's put it like this. We'll get into it a little bit right now. Think about it. Here are white people living in caves, right? They wasn't originally in Africa or the Middle East. They were over in Europe, right? They come up out the caves, right? They start traveling the globe, right? And they seeing black people already having institution of learning. In Africa, they started seeing black folks already building pyramids in Egypt, alchemy, astronomy, everything that you can think of, right? We already was mastering that, right? Okay, cosmology, think about it, we had it, right? And that's saying, well, from their vantage point, from their eyesight, from what they were experiencing and what they were judging life by was what their everyday reality was. And their everyday reality was just simple hunting, sex, and eating what they captured in the wild raw. Grunting, making noise, didn't really have a dialect. They wasn't speaking at that time until they were taught how to speak any language, right? So they saying, wow, these people are not like what they consider man to be, because the people in Egypt and throughout Nubia was already advanced. And you can put your own imagination to that and carry that further, but we got to get back at hand, right? The Minutemen were among the first to fight in the American Revolution. Their teams constituted about a quarter of the entire militia. They were generally younger and more mobile, right? The term has also been applied to various later United States civilian-based paramilitary forces to recall the success and patriotism of the originals. In the British colony of Massachusetts Bay, all able-bodied men between the ages of 16 and 60 were required to participate in their local militia. As early as 1645 in the Massachusetts Bay colony, and that practice is still going on today. Some men were selected from the general ranks of town-based training bands to be ready for rapid deployment. Men so selected were designated as Minutemen. They were usually drawn from settlers of each town, and so it was very common for them to be fighting alongside relatives and friends. That's why you will see in the Ahmaud Arbery case, that was the father and son who shot Ahmaud Arbery. They embodied this ideology of militia. Some towns in Massachusetts had a long history of designated a portion of their militia as Minutemen with minute companies, constituting special units within the militia system whose members underwent additional training and held themselves ready to turn out rapidly for emergencies at a minute's notice. And there's the name. Other towns, such as Lexington, preferred to keep their entire militia in a single unit. Members of the Minutemen, by contrast, were no more than 30 years old and were chosen for their enthusiasm, political reliability, and strength, right? So their political views, it's a dog whistle. Trump is sending a dog whistle. They were the first armed militia to arrive at or await a battle. Officers were elected by popular vote, as in the rest of the militia, and each unit drafted a formal written covenant to be signed upon enlistment. The militia typically assembled as an entire unit in each town 2 to 4 times a year for training during peacetime. But as the inevitability of war became apparent, the militia trained 3 to 4 times a week. In this organization, it was common for officers to make decisions through consultation and consensus with their men, as opposed to giving orders to be followed without question. If you're in a militia, they give an order, you got to follow it without question. The Massachusetts Provincial Congress found that the colony's militia resources were short just before the American Revolutionary War. On October 26, 1774, after observing the British military buildup, they found that including the sick and absent, it amounted to about 17,000 men, far short of the number wanted, that the council recommended an immediate application to the New England government to make up the deficiency. resolving to organize the militia better. The Massachusetts Provincial Congress recommended to the militia to form themselves into companies of Minutemen who should be equipped and prepared to march at the shortest notice. These Minutemen were to comprise 1/4 of the whole militia, to be enlisted under the direction of the field officers and divide into companies, consisting of at least 50 men each. The privates were to choose their captains and subalterns, and these officers were to form the companies into battalions, and chose the field officers to command the same. Hence, the Minutemen became a body distinct from the rest of the militia, and by being more devoted to military exercises, they acquired skill in the use of arms. More attention than formerly was likewise bestowed on the training and drilling of militia. The need for efficient Minutemen companies was enlisted by the powder alarm of 1774. Militia companies were called out to resist British troops who were sent to capture ammunition stores. By the time the militia was ready, the British regulars had already captured the arms at Cambridge and Charleston and had returned to Boston. So what we understanding is that the term Minutemen, the term militia, is nothing new. They've been training while you going to work and while you in the club, while you partying, while you at church, while you sitting up under white Jesus or whatever you doing, they training. And you saying, well, training for what? Getting ready for what? And they just heard that dog whistle. The code Trump called. We're in a theater of war with this COVID. That activated them. So in their mindset, when they going after this governor, Gretchen Whitmer, they're saying, hey, you are an enemy of the state by not opening up when the president said so we'll bag you the militia. But Trump is in a catch-22 because he has to walk a thin line. He don't want to lose his support with the right wings and the militias because he needs to get reelected so he don't be prosecuted for crimes, right? Or they say high crimes and misdemeanors. So, but yet at the same time, he don't want to go too far to where the whole country just goes up in rage and a civil war takes place. And then it'll be known throughout history that it took place under his watch. So we living in some crazy times. Let's just put it like that. But you're going to hear these terminologies. And I just wanted you to be up to speed on these certain terminologies that they're going to use from Minutemen, from militia, from Civil War, from Second Amendment rights, the right to bear arms and whatnot. All this is tied, but it's not something it's something that was made into a reality, right? Meaning if you say something, even if it's a lie, if you repeat it over and over again, people will believe it to be the truth, right? But it's done for a purpose to serve one individual, one person's interest, but it's engulfing so many people into it to where this thing is moving, and I don't think they know how to stop it. I don't think they know how to get out in front of it, and I don't think they know how to control it. And I could be wrong, but just in case, those who listens to this show need to be aware of what's actually going on. And we'll always keep you informed. Stay tuned and check us out on YouTube, because we got some videos that we do as well, other than the radio shows that's done. Make sure you tell your friends about the show. Like, subscribe. I appreciate Snare Smith. I appreciate Rock Conscious. I appreciate High Frequency. MVM, A-Tone Productions, Low Key, Jamal, Gino, so many people, man, that supports the show. I mean, people that's in key positions, that's movers and shakers in society, man. I appreciate y'all listenership. Verpic Radio, we're out.